Guyana, a natural resources rich country in South America, is currently facing what has been dubbed as an existential threat to its territory, sovereignty, and integrity as an independent nation. That's pretty much what Guyana's representatives recently told the World Court as they clamor to protect the country from being potentially annexed by Venezuela. This is the final takeaway. Please subscribe to keep up to date with this border controversy that is currently gaining traction in Guyana, Venezuela, and in the international sphere. I welcome your comments below, and please also feel free to fact check me on this complex issue over who owns Essequibo Guyana. That being said, things are heating up as Guyanese and their government wait in suspense to see what the Venezuelan government will do on December 3rd. Will President Nicolas Maduro go ahead with the threatened referendum set for December 3rd, which aims at getting the citizens of his country to essentially agree for Venezuela to annex or take what they called Guyana Essequibo, which is a huge chunk or 3/4 of the cooperative Republic of Guyana? Is this even legal? We're going to find out as we take a look back at the Tribunal Award of 1899 and the Geneva Agreement of 1966 that reinforced Guyana's claim to Essequibo and its borders as it relates to Venezuela. There is tension and a possible defense issue, possible war between Guyana and Venezuela after the latter country, that is Venezuela, after it once again openly lays claim to a portion of Guyana. It is the view of local and international stakeholders that this entire issue comes down to one simple thing: greed by Venezuela regarding Guyana's oil and gas basins. We'll explore why this is the general opinion. We will also review what's in the December 3rd referendum document planned by Venezuela to annex two-thirds of Guyana, and what the Guyana government is doing about this supposed existential threat to Guyana's sovereignty. But first, let's take a look at what is a referendum. A referendum is just a big word which really means that the citizens of a country, in this case Venezuela, can vote during a special election to help the government decide on an important issue of law, usually. In this case, it is the citizens of Venezuela casting their votes to decide if the country should now annex or take Essequibo away from Guyana and essentially make it a part of Venezuela. Is this the right way to settle a border dispute in today's civil society? In fact, does Venezuela even have legal rights to Essequibo to begin with? A member of Guyana's opposition political party, Amanza Walton Desire, says the question has been settled a long time back.
The agreed upon positions. One, that Essequibo belongs to Guyana. Two, that the Arbitral Award of 1899 definitively settled this issue. Three, that there is currently a matter before the ICJ and that we are committed to seeing that matter through.
Around 2015, Guyana found huge amounts of oil and gas under its coastal waters. According to a report by the BBC in September of 2023, Guyana, and I'm quoting here, now boasts reserves of about 11 billion barrels of oil. That puts it in the top 20 in terms of its potential on a par with countries such as Norway, Brazil, and Algeria. It is the view of many, including those in the international community, that Venezuela reignited the border dispute solely because Guyana hit oil in or around 2015. It's all about greed, according to them, and also wanting to intimidate and take advantage of a small developing country. A country which is rich in other resources such as gold and diamonds. The country is currently producing hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil per day, according to economic reports. More recently, the American multinational offshore drilling company ExxonMobil announced plans for further exploration and drilling in the coastal waters of the disputed region in Guyana, that's Essequibo. Venezuela then protested an oil tender announced by Guyana in September. The Spanish-speaking country argues that, and I quote, "the offshore areas are subject to dispute and the companies awarded the fields will not have the rights to explore them." All I can say is this. If the territorial dispute is not quickly resolved and resolved amicably, this controversy could very well lead to a political and military aggression by one or both of the countries involved. How is Guyana dealing with this existential threat by Venezuela, and what is the government doing about the issue? In a nutshell, the country is not giving in to Venezuela's plans and intentions. Here's a recent statement by the president of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali, who explains the Guyana government's position on the beef Venezuela currently has with the country.
Venezuela, like any sovereign state, has the right to consult its people on matters of national importance. But what Venezuela has planned for December 3rd is no ordinary consultation. What Venezuela seeks by way of this so-called referendum is a license not only to break the law, but to crumble it to bits. A license to violate and destroy Guyana's fundamental rights as a sovereign state. We neither expect nor need the court to stop Venezuela from holding its referendum. What we expect and need is an order from the court preventing Venezuela from carrying out any of the hostile actions that might be endorsed by that referendum, or any other actions that interfere with Guyana's sovereign rights.
And make note, Venezuela is the one who is seemingly fueling this dispute. A dispute for territorial boundaries that has been settled a very long time ago by way of the 1899 Paris Tribunal of Arbitration Award, which established the border between the Spanish-speaking country and the then British Guyana. Essequibo was thereafter officially recognized as a part of Guyana's territory, as the leader of Guyana's opposition political party reiterated yesterday at a press conference in Georgetown, Guyana.
The Geneva Agreement has saved us in the sense that it has put a legal framework that prohibits Venezuela from using military and other forms of aggression. So at this time, we should be focusing on utilizing the agreement in the most positive way.
However, Venezuela does not accept or honor the 1899 declaration by the Paris Tribunal of Arbitration Award that awarded Essequibo to the then British Guyana. Venezuela's non-acceptance led to the signing of the 1966 Geneva Agreement a few months before Guyana gained independence, or the then British Guyana gained independence from Britain, and which is now current day Guyana. What is the Geneva Agreement? Quickly, the Geneva Agreement is an agreement intended to resolve the conflict between Venezuela and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland over the border between Venezuela and British Guyana. The document was signed in Geneva, Switzerland on February 17, 1966. It also outlines what steps are to be taken by Venezuela and Guyana to peacefully resolve the border conflict. The newly independent Guyana joined the agreement and essentially took over from where Britain left off. The first article of the agreement recognizes Venezuela's claim that the 1899 court decision to award Essequibo to Guyana is null and void. In other words, Venezuela is not having it. But here's the kicker. The agreement does not support, neither does it dispute the Venezuela's null and void claim. Instead, it requires that the two countries acknowledge each other's opposing claims. Yes, it's mine. No, it's not yours. It also requires the two countries to seek a practical, peaceful, and satisfactory solution to the border dispute. So, in a nutshell, although Venezuela is a party to the Geneva Agreement, it also has never really accepted, acknowledged, or honored it due to its own unique, narrow, and short-sighted interpretation of the contents of the agreement. On this basis, the country will use the votes of its citizens to decide if they should annex or take Essequibo Guyana as their own. Venezuelan voters are asked to answer yes or no to these 5 things. Number 1, whether they agree to reject the 1899 Paris Arbitration Award that settled the border dispute in favor of Guyana. Number 2, whether they support the 1966 Geneva Agreement as the only valid legal document to follow in order to resolve the territorial dispute over Guyana Essequibo. Number 3, whether they agree with Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, which is now the World Court, as the proper court to resolve the territorial controversy over Guyana Essequibo. Number 5, whether they agree to oppose by all legal means Guyana's claim to unilaterally dispose of a sea pending delimitation illegally and in violation of international law. And number 5, whether they, the citizens, agree with the creation of the Guyana Essequibo state and the development of an accelerated plan, which include the granting of citizenship on identity card and including the Guyana Essequibo state on the map of Venezuelan territory. However, in the eyes of Guyana and all its patriotic Guyanese, the 1899 Tribunal Award in effect settled the land boundary between the now cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Here's Dr. Gary Best, a member of the Guyana's opposition party's executive membership.
Geneva Agreement checkmated Venezuela. It could not move outside the boundaries of the Geneva Agreement. So it actually checkmated Venezuela, and to that extent it benefited Guyana. Article 10 of the Venezuelan Constitution describes the Venezuelan boundary between Guyana and itself. And that description of the boundary is subject to arbitral awards that are not nullity. So the Venezuelan Constitution itself provides for its territory to be adjusted by an arbitral award, which happened in 1899. In 1899, there was an arbitral award, and that Venezuelan Constitution, Article 10, Venezuelans are bound by that. Secondly, Venezuela comprises 23 states, none of which is Essequibo. Thirdly, even in 1811 at Venezuelan independence, the territory of Venezuela was not fixed because they knew there were likely to be arbitration awards and discussions with border controversies that were not finalized. And in their constitution, it says subject to the 1899 award. It is binding in the Venezuelan constitution, and it is binding via the Paris Agreement. And the Venezuelans are very, very conscious of that.
What's more is that Guyana is not taking these referendum threats lightly, nor is it taking them lying down. There have always been pushbacks from the country to re-emphasize that Essequibo belongs to Guyana. As recent as 2 days ago, Guyana hoisted its national flag, the golden arrowhead, 2,200 feet high into the air at the peak of the Pacaraima mountain, along its borders near Venezuela. The flag was hoisted by the president of Guyana and he's also the commander of the armed forces, Dr. Irfan Ali. This auspicious event marked the first time the flag was raised along the Guyana-Venezuela border. Just over a week ago or so, Guyana asked the World Court to stop Venezuela's referendum over the disputed territory. Venezuela's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, who attended the court hearing in Hague, said Guyana's request for the court to stop the referendum is, quote-unquote, unprecedented, extraordinary, staggering, and barbarous. Rodriguez also made comments on Venezuela TV where she said the country will go ahead with the December 3rd referendum as planned. She also said that Venezuela is, quote-unquote, facing a very dangerous threat and risk that the constitutions of our countries can be overturned because a country simply doesn't like them. All that said, all the grandstanding aside, does Venezuela own Essequibo Guyana? The answer appears to be a no. Venezuela does not own or have legal rights to any of Guyana's territory, and this is based on all the existing legal and binding instruments, which includes the Tribunal Award of 1899 and Geneva Agreement. Why then does Venezuela insist that it owns Guyana's rightfully owned territory? Again, it may all come down to greed over the oil and gas discovered in Guyana. Here's the final takeaway. The referendum planned by President Maduro is a brazen move in the eyes of Guyana and international stakeholders. The fact that the Venezuelan president has to resort to a referendum says a lot. It speaks volume. He knows they have no legal claim or right to Essequibo. as they call Guyana, Essequibo. But Maduro has brainwashed his nation into thinking and believing Guyana is theirs, so that he can use them as a scapegoat to unlawfully take Guyana's land along with its wealth, which includes oil, gas, and precious minerals. Again, if it really and truly owned Essequibo, then why would Venezuela need a referendum to take what it legally and lawfully owns? President Maduro needs to use a referendum as validation and as justification for making this bold and unconventional move, an act which comes at a time when the world is far more civilized than in 1899 and in 1996, and when all the necessary legal avenues by way of the courts and legal instruments, such as treaties, are there to be capitalized upon to resolve territorial disputes in a mature, civil, and most of all, peaceful way. For all the Guyanese who are feeling fearful, anxious, or uncertain, it is not going to happen in their minds. Guyanese and their government are chanting, "Not a blade of grass." They are not going to cede their territory or stand by and watch Venezuela take a part of Guyana right from under them. All patriotic Guyanese and the international community as a whole should leave here with this. Guyana has always belonged to Guyana and Guyana only, even before its independence from British colonial rule. You have the comment section below to share your views on the brewing tension surrounding the dispute and what could potentially happen if Venezuela holds the referendum on December 3rd. Thank you for watching. See you next time on The Final Takeaway.